Hey everyone, we are back from New York Toy Fair and we have a surprise. Hasbro has given us early access to their new Star Wars retro collection and we have it right here in the studio.
No, those are actually from 1978.
They are? Well, the day has come and we knew it would eventually happen. Well, those of us who've been objective about this for the last 30 years. Well, really since 1995, I guess. And before I get started talking about this, I want to make one thing clear to those of you out there who are immediately going to say, well, Star Wars fans aren't happy with anything. They hate everything that comes out. You know, you give them what they want, they don't want that. And, you know, then you give them something new and they say it's too new and they want the old stuff. And then you give them the old stuff and they want something new. They're impossible to please. That's not what this scenario is about at all. So you need to throw that away right now, because in 1995, when they said, hey, we're coming out with a new line of Star Wars toys, everybody was thrilled. We were looking forward to retooled versions of our favorite heroes and characters and aliens and bounty hunters and all that kind of stuff. What ended up happening was they went with, very mid-90s trends of making everybody super muscular. They couldn't fit in the vintage vehicles, and it was kind of a kerfuffle in the grand scheme of things. And it's become infamous. Power of the Force 2 is kind of an infamous toy line because everybody's super beefy and they look bad and they're all, really posed. And Princess Leia has a monkey face, and it's not that we didn't like what was literally new. We didn't like the result of what they made. Whereas on the other hand, as I reviewed a few months ago, Mattel's Legacy Collection for Jurassic Park is actually a great line of toys. I mean, those are solid toys. I mean, if we had gotten added articulation and accurate sculpting of the sizes of their frames and all that kind of stuff to the actors back then we wouldn't have still been hunched over talking about our vintage stuff as better than the modern stuff. And as I said in my Rogue One special, the 2-part feature that I did last year or the year before, I can't remember now, not all of the super articulated Hasbro figures are bad. I mean, Hasbro had a lot of ambition, around 08 to 08 to 12, 2008 to 2012-ish, I guess. They really had a lot of ambition there, and they did some impressive stuff, and I'm not going to take that away from Hasbro. They did brand it under the Vintage Collection, but it showed their willingness to go, put themselves out on storefronts with good distribution and say, hey. Now, around 2011, I believe the distribution, I think it was around the time the Best Ben Han Vintage Collection came out, there started to be some real distribution problems, which have continued to this day without any real explanation from Hasbro that makes sense. But in all that time, they did not revisit the Vintage Collection. They tried it in 1995. They tried it with a 4-pack. It was Luke, Han, Chewie, and Darth Vader. And they were all sold as the Vintage or Classic Collection, whatever you want to call it, in a 4-pack. And there was a lot of backlash at the time from collectors. Now, for those of you who don't remember, because maybe you weren't old enough to be keyed into this stuff, I was. The vintage collectors who wanted the new stuff didn't want to buy into this repro or recreated Star Wars line that they either already had or were concerned that it would confuse the marketplace with the value of their weapons. I was actually in the former category, which was I wanted to see something new. I didn't want to see something, old. I never concerned myself with, whether or not they would, affect the prices of accessories and figures in the marketplace. Oh no. I was the former category. And so they quickly abandoned that because they weren't selling. The kids didn't want them because they looked old, and the adults didn't want them for the 2 reasons I just outlined. So they stayed away from it. And then they, at the same time, they gave us these beefy characters that didn't really fly. We were buying them, but we weren't jazzed about it, And then as we got closer to episode 1, they started slimming things down. You know the whole story. But in all that time, they were saying, this is the Vintage Collection. We're going to put up these new hyper-articulated figures on retro card backs. And for a while, that was actually a really cool thing to do because collectors got what they wanted and kids could get the characters from the classic movies, and they were bringing in the prequel films and all that kind of stuff. And it just worked out. It was a nice period of time for you if you were a modern collector. This is a different animal altogether. Now, these are the figures from 1978, but these are the 6 figures that they're saying they're going to release on May 14th or whatever it is this year, the Star Wars Retro Collection. You know, Hasbro has already gone back to 5 points of articulation with their entire line for the most part. So why are they now suddenly going retro with vintage cardback recreations with fake printed dog ears and wrinkles on them, no less? What was the impetus behind that? Well, I have 2 things I want to say about this that are top of my mind. One, they're doing it because the toys and characters of the new films have over time cascaded into there isn't an interesting lineup of characters. Because if there was a truly interesting lineup of new characters from these new films, they wouldn't be putting Hoth Leia in the Solo line, and they wouldn't be putting, Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Last Jedi line and things like that. So that they don't have interesting product to put out. So that's a problem. The kids aren't buying those. So now they're weighing in on, the adult collectors, because that's another thing, the critics love to say is like, these are toys for kids. These are movies for kids. If that's true, then why are they suddenly offering up a line of 1978 remolds? Do you really think kids are going to want those? No, this is aimed at adults. Star Wars is just as much for adults as it is for kids. You guys got to drop that talking point about Star Wars being only for kids. There's too much evidence to the contrary, all the way back to 1977. So just kill that. I don't want to hear that anymore. What they're doing here with this is, one, Hasbro is desperate because they realize nobody's into their products because there aren't any interesting new ideas coming out of the Lucasfilm house. And so they don't have anything really mass appeal to make. So they're still trying to hold on to those classic Star Wars fans that are still with them and say, hey, we're putting out this retro stuff. But the other thing with this that's really frustrating is that this is the true definition of a cash grab. And the reason I say that is because ever since Force Awakens came out in 2015, and really before that for the last few years, although especially after Force Awakens came out, because at that point, Hasbro's ambitions in the toy aisle really took a nosedive. That was a few years out from the vintage collection that I told you about, those golden years of modern new stuff that was actually cool. They were doing 5 POA resculpts, brand new sculpts of the classic characters and 5 POA 2-packs, the battle packs and the mission packs, or whatever they called them. And, the adult collectors who've been collecting Super Articulated the whole time didn't want them. People like me who had jumped ship really didn't care. We were just looking at the aisle going, this is weird. They're going backwards. Well, since 2015, since Force Awakens, vintage prices have skyrocketed online. And I think it's because a lot of people in my generation and the original Star Wars generation are saying, you know what, the only real value, and I mean that not in a monetary way necessarily, but in an emotional, nostalgic, and historical way, the only real value with Star Wars toys, apart from people who are still wheeling and dealing them, in the modern bend, as far as a legacy is concerned, is going to be the vintage line. So now prices have been shooting up. It used to be that Princess Leia with her blaster and everything was $50. Now we're pushing toward just the blaster being $50 on eBay. And in some cases, $70 and insane prices for just the little accessories. And then the figures are now much more expensive. Farm Boy Luke in good condition is edging towards $100 loose and things like that. Those are the prices I have seen on occasion. I don't really have to worry about it myself. I've got my collection. But Hasbro has to be looking at that. They have to be looking at that and saying, we could really make some money off this. We should re-release these. What makes me laugh about that is all of the anti-repro people must be losing their minds right now. And that's what I tried to tell you all months ago, years ago, every time I did a restoration and got criticism for it, or showed, reviewed fan-made figures, not repro figures, but fan-made figures like the ones I showed from Vader Trader and Think Outside the Toy Box, all of those, some of which are extremely nice, like those Sand Troopers and things like that. All the people are like, those are repros, those are junk, repro. Well, now the company that owns Star Wars' merchandising license is literally making repros in-house. So what are you going to say now? I've tried to tell you for the longest time, you have to make peace with the fact that repros are going to be in the market. And for the longest time, people were saying, oh, no, you can't do that. That's desecration. They're plastic, okay? Educate yourself and you don't have to worry about it as much. You can either be a guy or a girl who is okay with repros or not. But now the parent company of the licensing is making repros, not just the accessories, but the figures as well. And they're doing it to make money. But notice something. They didn't start out by making the figures that all of the vintage collectors actually have wanted forever. They didn't start out by making Stormtrooper Han Solo or Biggs or Wedge. They didn't make any of those in the first 6. Imagine if they had done that in the first 6. Imagine if they had said, hey, we're starting the official Kenner Retro Collection line, and we're starting it with the 6 figures you've wanted forever. Tarkin, Stormtrooper Han, Wedge, Leia in Jabba's palace, and pick 2 others. I can't even think of them off the top of my head. That would have been pretty cool. That would have been pretty awesome. That would have been a big salute to the collectors from all across the map. But they didn't do that. So it's funny to me that the people who love modern and don't worry about the repro thing so much, they're getting burned. The people who have been obsessed, I think, misguidedly about repros, and they've made that their crusade, that's the hill they want to die on. Now they're getting, messed up by Hasbro. And the sad part about this is that you have had fans for years now who have decided to take up the torch. And they've said, you know what? If Hasbro won't give us what we've always wanted, or they won't give us, the vintage stuff we've always wanted, we're just going to do it ourselves. And they've gotten to the point where they're doing an amazing job at it. And I know Hasbro's probably been taking notice of that too. So between the prices on eBay and the amazing stuff that's coming out of boutique customization houses, and it's really not even it's not even really customization. It's making actual action figures from the ground up, which is awesome, Between those two groups, Hasbro is trying to desperately find a way to get some money out of this in the middle. And they're doing it at the expense of all the people who for years were like, hey, we want new stuff, we want better stuff. And Hasbro's been like, no, we're just going to keep regressing. We're just going to keep backing up. We're going to back up into 5 POA. We're going to have hardly any toys on the shelves. You're going to have to hunt for everything. Most of our stuff won't even show up in your market until 2 years after the fact, and it'll be at a Tuesday morning or a discount outlet, and you won't know why. You would have never saw it at a major retailer. I've heard about Hasbro reps telling people that if you ever see the stuff that's about to come out, like the last wave of Rogue One, apparently a Hasbro rep told a collector at a toy event, like a toy convention, toy fair, trade show, whatever. He said, what about wave 3 of Rogue One? And he said, well, if you ever see it on eBay in the next few days, you better grab it from who's ever selling it, because you'll probably never see it. I mean, that's not good. That's not good stuff. It's very disheartening. And I'm just sitting back stunned at the whole thing. I'm not surprised, but I am stunned by the brazenness of it, and how many people it's going to hurt, whether or not it really hurts me. Like the repro thing, that doesn't bother me at all. I don't collect repros myself, but I'm not threatened by them. I don't worry about them. And And that's been my point with the repro thing. It's like, I don't sweat it. I don't collect them, but I don't sweat it. And with the fan-made figures, it's just like with the restorations of Star Wars trilogy themselves that are going on. And even the prop replicas, it's the fans that are doing the best work right now. The parent studio and the parent licensee are not doing their best work right now. And they haven't for quite a while. They haven't since 2012. It's the fans that have been doing all the best work on all fronts when it comes to Star Wars. And, you need look no farther than the custom figures that have been made by people like Vader Trader, which I'll have a link of that video at the end of this. So, you guys out there who are, Hasbro devotees, I'm curious what you're thinking these days, because this is the reality. Hasbro is not going to hold something sacred. They're not going to say, oh, we shouldn't put that out because it might affect values of vintage stuff. They don't care. They want a piece of that very lucrative pie, and they're taking it from you right now. It's something you should have never invested yourself in. If you were buying Star Wars figures obsessed about monetary value, I don't know what to tell you. Will they always be desirable in some fashion? Of course they will, because they're Star Wars. But if you thought for a minute that Hasbro was going to stay honorable to that, if they can make some money after they've already lost millions and millions on the latest round of Star Wars merchandising, as we've heard from the news, then you were fooling yourselves. So, they're already crowdfunding vehicles, for God's sakes. Why does Hasbro need to crowdfund vehicles? Put them on the shelf and let people buy them or not buy them. Star Wars shouldn't be a risk. Well, I think now we see what Star Wars has really become on the merchandising shelf, on the toy aisle. And it's sad, but it's not going to keep me up at night. And I hope this announcement from Hasbro gives everybody in the collecting community a little perspective in both directions. Perspective about how worried they should be or not be worried about reproductions, and also, the obsessive fight over whether or not Star Wars is for adults and whether or not the collectible should always be new or old. My opinion, Hasbro should still be trying to do new and better stuff. They should, when I say new, I mean push the toys forward. Even if the toy still depicts, desert Luke Skywalker from Tatooine, fine. But still, push the technology forward, push it forward, show us something new, show us something interesting, like I said in the Rogue One video. So we're working on, actually right now I'm filming the new Star Wars Follies. That's going to be out within the next hopefully next week. And I am working on Robotech Part 2. I'm getting through the series, the next series, so you'll be seeing that soon. So we have a number of new videos coming out. So just stay tuned, and you'll see those soon. So thanks for watching this, guys, and we will see you on the next video.